All right. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to comment on several things that he said. He mentioned there is evidence for evolution from homology, from vestigial structures, the human eye is a poor design. I won't think I'll be able to cover all that, but you can get my video series on my website, drdino.com, and watch the whole thing. This textbook says the appendix is vestigial. This is ludicrous, okay? This is a lie. The appendix is not vestigial. You do need your appendix, okay? The appendix is part of your immune system. It's true you can live without it. You can also live without both your legs and both your arms and both your eyes. That doesn't prove you don't need them, okay? If your appendix is taken out, you have a much better chance of getting quite a few diseases, and something else in the immune system has to work harder. It's like losing a finger. You can still have a grip, but now the rest of the fingers have to work harder. If somebody tells you the appendix is vestigial, they are either confused about their anatomy or they're lying to you, but it's not true. This textbook says the whale has a vestigial pelvis. This is one that he brought up earlier about the whale having a vestigial pelvis. Now, hold on a minute. National Center for Science Education is funded by Andrew Carnegie's grant. He loved the evolution theory. The National Center for Science Education, who all of them refused to debate me 2 weeks ago when I was at Berkeley. They teach the people that cows evolved to whales, bossy to blowhole. Well, here's their evidence. Whales have a vestigial pelvis and leg bone that serve no purpose. Just imagine the hind limb bones that have no function, the textbook says. Imagine whales walking around. It's true. Here's the bones they're talking about right there. You can see them at your Los Angeles Museum right down the road here. Those are the bones. Yes, just imagine the whale walking around. This textbook says the whale's pelvis is located far from the vertebra and has no apparent function. The whale's pelvis is evidence of its evolution from four-legged land-dwelling mammals. This is a lie. Those bones are anchor points that special muscles attach to. And without those special bones and those special muscles, the whales cannot reproduce. Male and female whales have different bones in that region to support different muscles for different reasons. This has nothing to do with walking on land. It has to do with getting baby whales. Okay? So the people that are writing this in the textbooks are either ignorant of whale anatomy or they're lying trying to push their theory. I hope they're just ignorant. That we can fix. If they're lying, they ought to get a different job picking peaches or changing tires. They got no business taking tax dollars to lie to the kids coming through their class. It says these bones resemble those of other mammals, but they are weakly developed in the whale and have no apparent function. This is a college biology book. This guy ought to be fired. He doesn't understand his whale anatomy. They're teaching this stuff like it's some kind of fact. Is this a university to get educated, or are you just getting indoctrinated in a theory? Okay? They say ambulocetus, pictured here, is mostly imagination. The dark bones are the only ones actually found. Ambulocetus is not a missing link. Ambulocetus is just a few fragments of bone. How about B.J. Stahl, Vertebrate History, Dover publisher, said the Basilosaurus is not an intermediate. He said the Archaeocetes could not possibly have been ancestral to any of the modern whales. Pakicetus, shown here, all they found was one piece of a skull, a small piece of jaw, and a few teeth. That's enough to know it used to be a whale? You've got to be kidding. Now here you are, Skeptic Magazine. Why aren't you skeptical of a claim like that? No pelvic bones were found, and little is known about the tail, but the authors are certain the feet were enormous. As such, Ambulocetus represents a critical intermediate. This is pure propaganda, okay? We could talk all day about the whale anatomy. He mentioned about the snake. I happen to have a 15.5-foot python snake skin in my museum in Pensacola, Florida. If you look at the south end of that python, you will see it has two little bitty claws. Those claws are attached to little tiny bones going up inside the snake's body. That's a fact, okay? They have them. Textbook says these are rudimentary hind legs of a python snake. He mentioned that earlier, that the snake pelvis is evidence for evolution. Look, those little claws and those little bones have nothing to do with walking on land. The snakes use those claws in mating, okay? They don't have any arms, right? And they can't talk. They can't talk and say, "Screw it over, honey," okay? This has nothing to do with walking on land. So the people that are saying the snake has a vestigial leg are ignorant of snake anatomy or are lying trying to push a theory off. Okay, but it's not true. They use those bones and those little muscles. This textbook says humans have a tailbone that is of no apparent use. It says the vestigial tailbone in humans is homologous to the functional tail of other primates. Thus, vestigial structures can be viewed as evidence for evolution. You can rewind the tape and see that's what he said in his opening comments. One of the evidences for evolution is vestigial structures. I would like to point out, Your Honor, vestigial structures is losing something, not gaining something. How can that be evidence for evolution? How did you get it to begin with? Secondly, the tailbone is not vestigial. One guy told me, he said, up at Berkeley, he said, "I think the tailbone is vestigial." I said, well, I taught biology and anatomy. I happen to know there are 9 little muscles that attach to the tailbone, without which you cannot perform some valuable functions. I won't tell you what they all are, but trust me, you need those muscles. Get your Gray's Anatomy. Now, if you believe the tailbone is vestigial, then I will pay to have yours removed. Okay? Bend over. This textbook says the coccyx is a small bone at the end of the human vertebral column. It has no present function and is thought to be the remainder of bones that once occupied the long tail of a tree-living ancestor. Either these authors are ignorant of anatomy or they're lying. I don't see another option. Okay? If you know of one, please let me know. But it's not true that they're vestigial. And even if there were vestigial structures, that is the opposite. He mentioned that the human eye is poor design because the blood vessels are in front of the rods and cones. Well, the fact of the matter is, we live in the air, okay? Air is a poor insulator for UV light. Your body's last defense against ultraviolet light is a layer of blood vessels in front of the retina to protect the rods and cones from UV light. Some people say octopus. One atheist I debated in New York said octopus have a much better eye because their blood vessels are behind the retina. Ours are wired backwards. It's poor design. I said, well, sir, octopus live in the water. Okay? Water blocks UV light. They don't need their blood vessels in front. So if you want to swap eyes with an octopus, you just go ahead, but you're going to be blind in a few days. We're designed for living in the air, and they're designed for living in the water. And I think the eye is incredibly designed. At 51, mine are starting to fade a little bit, but hey, that's expected, okay? That's an example. We used to be much better. Things are getting worse. That's the second law of thermodynamics. Things are falling apart. Let's see. He mentioned that when he got through Pepperdine, he went off to graduate school and decided he got to think. To me, that implies that if you don't believe in evolution, you're not thinking. I happen to resent that. I happen to think a lot, and I enjoy thinking, and I enjoy the object of I enjoy science. I like studying. I think what happens, though, is you get indoctrinated when you come to a university like this. You get to be told what to believe. You don't really get to think. Because if you wrote a paper, suppose a teacher stood up 10 years ago in the Soviet Union, where my daughter-in-law is from. Teacher gets up in class and says, hey, students, I don't believe in communism anymore. Capitalism is a much better system. What would happen? That teacher would be shoveling snow in Siberia if they survived. And if a teacher gets up in this university tomorrow or Monday and says, kids, I don't believe in evolution anymore. I think creation is true. They will go to academic Siberia. There have been hundreds of teachers fired, lost their jobs, lost their government grants, precisely because they didn't bow down and kiss the feet of the sacred cow of evolution. Evolution's a religion, nothing more. There's no scientific evidence to back it up. If you think there is some, I really, really would like to see it. He mentioned that the Pope accepts evolution. That's because the Pope has never been to my seminar. And I don't care what the Pope believes on any subject, okay? I care what does the Bible say and what does science teach us. He mentioned in his opening comments that Answers in Genesis, Ken Ham, disagrees with me on most subjects. That is absolutely not true. I know Ken Ham well. I've met with him several times, talked to him numerous times. He and I disagree on a couple of little things. We agree on 99% of the things, and on the other 1%, he's wrong, I'm right, but it's real simple. Okay? But I sell his books and support his ministry, and I think you're simply wrong if you think there's a vast disagreement there. Just little minor stuff that doesn't amount to nothing. He said this argument's only going on in America and New Zealand. Well, that's not true, first